What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you guys through the ultimate guide to Game Week 6. So if you guys have watched the best predicted team video, you'll notice that I actually covered the best fixtures from an attacking and a defensive point of view in that video. So I have eliminated that from the ultimate guide series just because we basically have already covered it. If you guys do want to go check out the other videos that I've created this week, you can go check them out by just clicking on the channel description, or I might put some links down in the description below. But in this ultimate guide video, we'll be covering the usual other talking points, starting off with the watch list and then moving swiftly onto the injury news, more specifically in terms of Patrick Bamford, and I'm recovering him after he was ruled out in Bielsa's press conference just today. So I'll be telling you guys what I would be doing if I did own Bamford in terms of transferring him out or maybe just sticking him on the bench and hoping that he returns next game week. Then the final talking point, and probably the one that's going to be the main topic of this video, and that's going to be the captaincy debate for Game Week 6. And towards the end of the video, I'll be discussing my own kind of talking points, then looking at the stats, and finally the predicted points from Fantasy Football Fix. So that's something you guys are interested in. Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So before we get onto the talking points of the Game Week 6 Ultimate Guide, I just want to give you guys a reminder that I actually did release the team selection last night. So unfortunately on YouTube, there's a little bit of a glitch going around where it takes forever to process the HD version of the video, and unfortunately I got that glitch yesterday, and that led me to only be able to release the video quite late on, at least for my own time, but probably for your guys' time as well. So you might have missed it in your sub box or also on your recommended. So I would appreciate if you guys do go check that video out. As I always say, the team selection is super specific to my own team, whereas this ultimate guide series is just a little bit more general, and we go over some more talking points that relate to everyone, whereas in the team selection I go over my own transfer thoughts and I talk about the players that I currently own in my FPL team. So enough of the reminder, just go check it out if you guys haven't, as I know the team selections are always quite popular. But now let's get on and talk about the actual ultimate guide. So the first talking point I just want to cover quickly is just going to be about the injury news. So yes, we'll be talking about Patrick Bamford a little bit later on in the video, but we have still had some more general kind of injury news, especially about the Leeds assets. So Luke Ayling and a Rafinha haven't necessarily been ruled out of Game Week 6, but there are major doubts for the upcoming fixture. So if you guys are relying on a Rafinha or a Luke Ayling and basically have to have them play, I would consider maybe doing a transfer or maybe toughening up your bench a little bit because they might not feature on the weekend. So the Rafinha debate for my own personal team is quite a big one because it does seem like he's going to be a major doubt. And the thing about Rafinha is that even if he does feature, he still is slightly injured and he is currently playing with the injury. So is that going to kind of dampen his attacking output? Is the fact that Bamford is now confirmed out also going to kind of dampen his attacking outlook? That's something that we have to take into account. And honestly, if you guys did check out the team selection, I might slightly be leaning towards taking Rafinha out to one of the other options. In terms of a Luke Ayling, I'm perfectly fine with kind of benching him, but if you guys do have to, as I said, rely on these players, I would heavily consider taking them out because they might not feature in Game Week 6. Other kind of injury news to check out for, the big one is going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold coming up tomorrow in Jurgen Klopp's press conference. As far as I know, he's going to be fine for the weekend, but we never kind of know with these illness situations. He could have had a repeat of the symptoms, for example, midweek, and that's going to keep him out for the game week. But as I said, we'll get all that news in the press conference tomorrow, so please pay attention to that news that we will be getting probably over on Twitter. So now going on to my watch list, and I have updated the watch list with two new positions, and those two new positions are going to be Ismaila Sarr from Watford and then Demarai Gray from Everton. So the reason I have kind of favored the midfielders, as I spoke about in the previous talking point, Rafinha currently does look like he might miss Game Week 6, and that's why I'm currently looking for a replacement. So that's why Ismaila Sarr, Demarai Gray, top of my kind of radar after obviously Ismaila Sarr's great returns in Game Week 5. So I'm not exactly chasing the points here. He does still have two great fixtures coming up against Newcastle and then also plays Leeds in Game Week 7. So that's why I'm keeping my eyes on Ismaila Sarr, and I also could maybe look to move him in for Rafinha before the Game Week 6 deadline. Is currently looking like he might rise in price tonight, so please check that out if you guys do want to buy the Watford winger. But that 0.1 million could be worth it, maybe holding off so that we do get that press conference news tomorrow. Demarai Gray, another player that could come in for Rafinha, and he does have the best fixture in game week 6 in my opinion against the Norwich side, and I do think this is going to be a home game for Everton as well. The thing about Demarai Gray that's also quite interesting is now that Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin are both injured, he could almost play as a second striker for Everton, and that just makes him almost an out of position player and a better FPL option at the end of the day. So these two midfielders are my current favorite options to look out for. There are other options like a Ben Rama that I did take out before game week 5, but I think I might not go back to him. I might decide to go for Demarai Gray or Ismail Assar. The last player on the watch list is kind of a nice cheap option that has been playing 2 clean sheets wrapped up for Arsenal. Those games were against Burnley and Norwich though, so you're probably expecting them to keep a clean sheet. But the nice thing about Tomiyasu is that he is playing as a fullback. And at 4.5, I think it's worth the extra money over someone like a Ben White, just because he does offer more of an attacking threat, I feel, from fullback. That's why I'm keeping my eyes on Tomiyasu, as those Arsenal fixtures for the foreseeable future are still quite good. Let me know in the comments down below who's on your watch list, as we have seen some players come out of the blue and look like really good options for these next couple game weeks. So now going on to the main man himself, Paddy Bamford. He has been confirmed out by Bielsa in their press conference today. So if you guys are an owner, a new owner, an old owner, quite an annoying factor there, as it looked like he might have recovered from this ankle injury for game week 6. But that's not the case. He's going to be missing it. Was confirmed out by Bielsa, as I said. And the thing about Bielsa is that you don't have to look too much into it. He's a very transparent manager, usually tells it as it is. So I wouldn't be kind of expecting any surprise appearances for Leeds against West Ham. So now what to do with Patrick Bamford? Should you sell him? Should you not? Now I do think I'm going to give it a little bit of a disclaimer here. The first thing that I would look at is your team structure. This is going to depend if you have to take Bamford out or keep him, and it's a similar situation to how we were with Antonio for game week 5. Now if you do have a bench, or at least a player on your bench that has a relatively good fixture, I would simply just bench Bamford, because that West Ham game would have been a tough one in my opinion anyways. West Ham have looked like a little bit of a stronger defensive side, haven't been up to their usual self of last season, this season, but they still have put in a good shift defensively, and I think with all the injuries that Leeds currently have, that might have dampened the attacking output of Bamford anyways, so you might have had a little bit of a write-off against West Ham, and that's why I think it's not too much of a problem. Now if it is confirmed that Bamford will miss the short term or at least the medium term, I think that's definitely a transfer out that I'd consider, but right now it does look like it's only going to be a 1 game week injury, and that's how I would suggest holding him unless you don't have a bench. And that's where it comes in. If you are relying on a Bamford, like I said, for Rafinha and Ayling, then I would probably do a transfer out, or what I would do is kind of strengthen your bench a little bit. There's a couple of nice cheap options in terms of the defense and the midfield department that you guys can rely on for some points, at least for 1 game week, and then just simply bring Bamford in for the next game week where he has a better fixture against Watford. And the main reason for me wanting to keep Bamford so strongly, I don't own him personally. I'm really jealous if you guys do. Not really that jealous right now because he's injured, but with those Leeds fixtures coming up, and if he does come back to full fitness, going to be a great option to go for. And as I said, the main reason why I wouldn't take Bamford out is that if you guys don't own Antonio or Ronaldo, 100% maybe move for those. But in terms of the other options, there's not too many good options to go for. We already spoke about Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin being injured. I guess those would be the go-to options with a lovely fixture against Norwich. But then, I mean, just think about the other options to go for. Yes, a Gucci, a St. Maxim is looking quite strong, but Newcastle also a little bit hit or miss at the current moment. We then have a player like a Dennis that you could maybe downgrade for. Yes, they could be a nice option to go for, but I would probably think that Bamford in the next couple game weeks would be a better option. And then, I mean, you're left with maybe a Raul Jimenez. Now, Jimenez, if you guys do know Wolves, if you have Wolves assets, if you have a Traore, you would know this, that Wolves are simply terrible at the current moment in terms of attacking ability, in terms of the stats, looking quite strong, but they simply just not creating the returns, and that's why I think I would rather wait for Raul Jimenez to at least get an assist or a goal this Premier League season before bringing him in. Also, I've seen a nice little differential to go for maybe a Timo Pukki and Adam Armstrong, but I think if it's going to be a 1 game week injury, just keep Bamford rather, and then those other options can be wait and sees if you want to downgrade them maybe on a wild card or with 2 free transfers. What I also did was I went over to Fantasy Football Fix and I used their algorithm to create the projected points for Bamford over this next round of fixtures up till game week 12. So yes, this does include his suspended game or his injured game, which is going to be game week 6. And what you guys can kind of do is analyze these points, take an average, but just a little bit of a hint, in game week 7 was projected to score about 5.8 points, which is relatively respectable for a mid-range striker. So to kind of give a conclusion or a roundup of Bamford, I would keep him as long as possible for these next couple game weeks unless we do get news of a potential injury. If you guys are relying on him to start and you don't have a starting 11 without him, I would suggest maybe trying to prioritize a bench transfer instead of taking out the English striker to someone else. If you guys don't own Antonio though, that's a no-brainer transfer for me there. I think he could even be a captaincy option in game week 6. A little bit of a spoiler alert there for the last section of this video, but I think if you don't own Antonio, no-brainer to do. But if you do own Antonio and Ronaldo, I would rather just keep Bamford for at least the short term. So now moving on to the final talking point of this video, and it's going to be the main talking point, and it's going to revolve around the captaincy debate for game week 6. And why I say it's a debate, it's because it's not as cut and dry as previous game weeks. There are honestly 3 options that I think are perfectly viable to put the armband for your own FPL teams. I'm going to start off with the most differential out of them, and I would probably argue the best option to actually go for, and that's going to be Antonio from West Ham. So the reason I'm saying differential is because he will 100% be captained by less people than Ronaldo and Salah, and that's what makes him a little bit of a lower effective ownership player. But in terms of why I think he might be the best option to actually go for, is that I think he has the best fixture out of these 3 options. Leeds away, although it is an away game, that Leeds team has been absolutely hit with injuries, especially in the defensive department. I could honestly be lining up for Leeds at centre back this weekend. Who kind of knows who's going to be playing for them at the current moment? And if Luke Ayling is not going to play in that fixture, I mean, they're probably going to have to play a kind of a debutant centre back. And just imagine a player like an Antonio going against the less experienced centre-back, absolute gold in my eyes, and that's how I really am favouring him. In terms of the rest of the lineup, Leeds are also struggling for attacking injuries. And overall, I don't think they're looking that strong against West Ham. And after coming from a League Cup victory over United, that Leeds squad's going to be absolutely buzzing, and I think Antonio is going to be raring to go coming back from that suspension. So if I had the courage, I would probably go with Antonio, but I think I might go a little bit safer and go for one of Ronaldo or Mo Salah. And that leads us to our next debate between Mo Salah and Ronaldo, and that's generally where I'm going to focus on this video. In the next talking point, I'll be covering the stats, but in this one, I'm going to tell you guys about my own thoughts and my own perception about these two. So right now, the thing that's differentiating Ronaldo and Mo Salah to me is going to be that home fixture versus the away fixture. I spoke about this in the team selection yesterday, but currently for me, it's a 60-40 decision in favor of Ronaldo. The home fixture is just too much of an advantage for me, and this Premier League season, the home sides have been performing better in terms of the attacking and the defensive outputs than the away teams. And then kind of touching on the fixture, I think in terms of Aston Villa and Brentford, both of these two teams are a little bit equal in terms of the defensive stats. Aston Villa picked up quite a good victory against Everton, and in terms of the defensive stats, actually haven't been as bad as maybe people have thought. We then go on to Brentford, who have probably had the underrated defense of the Premier League, at least up until this point, but a lot of people have been saying that they haven't really faced the attacking giants of the Premier League. They have faced Brighton and Wolves, who are quite XG merchants, and that's maybe why they haven't conceded that many goals, is because these two teams simply can't finish. And now this newly promoted defense is going to be facing, if not the best, arguably one of the best attacking sides, not even in the Premier League, in the world. So I mean, Mo Salah, I think he still could actually have a good game here. And if you are expecting Liverpool to score, as most people are, you got to favour Mo Salah to be on the receiving end of at least an assist or a goal. Now the next debate to kind of take into account, and the talking point that I usually think about when it's a tough captaincy decision, is going to be the positions of these two options. So Ronaldo is a forward in FPL and Mo Salah is a midfielder. As a midfielder, he gets an extra point for a clean sheet, and he also gets an extra point for a goal. So if you are expecting Ronaldo and Mo Salah both to get a goal, you would rather captain Mo Salah because he gets that extra point. And then in terms of the clean sheet point, that's not kind of out the water. I think that Liverpool could definitely keep a clean sheet against Brentford, as although they had quite a good game against Wolves, in terms of the other fixtures, haven't been that great from the attacking point of view, so Liverpool could definitely keep a clean sheet in this fixture. But my own personal conclusion is that I actually think that Ronaldo will get more FPL returns than Mo Salah will, so the extra clean sheet point and the extra point per goal won't even matter. So to kind of conclude my decision before looking at the stats of these two options, I think that I'm going to captain Ronaldo because 1, he has the home fixture, and 2, on paper, I'm expecting him to get more returns than Mo Salah will. But in terms of the differential captain, I really do favour Antonio, and if you guys do want to take a punt, I think he's a perfectly good option to kind of put the captaincy armband on. So now that we've gone through my own thoughts on Mo Salah versus Cristiano Ronaldo, I wanted to look at the stats between these two options to just reinforce my decision on these two. So what I did was I went over to Fantasy Football Fix and I went to their Opta Stats sandbox and I put a comparison between Ronaldo and Mo Salah in terms of the general stats section. So if you guys want to go more in depth, you can go over to Fantasy Football Fix. They've got a whole abundance of sectors. You can look at a goal threat. You can also look at shooting, expected points. That kind of goes more in depth in terms of expected goals, expected assists, but I think the general overview gives us a nice holistic approach to the stats between these two options. What I also wanted to cover is that I sorted these according to 90 minutes played, so you don't have to worry about Mo Salah playing more minutes than Ronaldo. Obviously, Ronaldo signed a little bit later on and started the season a little bit later on than Mo Salah, but these stats are basically per 90 minutes, so they are on a fair kind of playing field. So in terms of my own Captaincy decision, the stats that I was actually kind of looking at was this goal threat. In terms of total shots on target, Ronaldo does best Mo Salah, and this is kind of a surprise to me because Mo Salah is usually quite a good kind of shot merchant. He takes a lot of shots, doesn't always get them on target, but at least this season looks to have quite a good shot accuracy. But then going on to Ronaldo, he's averaging 2 shots more than Mo Salah per 90 minutes played, and also therefore has 1 more shot on target, which is always quite good for expected FPL points. This comes back to those thoughts I was telling you guys about in the team selection, that Ronaldo is just one of those players that you want to own in FPL because he shoots on sight and he's quite a selfish player. Now I mean that in the best sense of the word, and you guys know in FPL we always like a little bit of selfishness in our options because that just usually guarantees some more points. And in terms of Ronaldo, I think even over Mo Salah, generally known as quite a selfish player, he kind of edges him even in that. In terms of expected goals, Ronaldo does also best Mo Salah in that department. It's only kind of on the expected assist that Mo Salah does have the edge over the Portuguese striker. Now finally, talking on the expected points and the realistic points, you can see that Ronaldo's actually underperformed slightly his expected points, whereas Mo Salah's actually got more points than he was expected to get. Now I wouldn't really look at these expected stats. The only thing I would kind of look at is XG, expected assists, and then also total shots, and then maybe FPL assists. And on that stats consensus, I think that it's kind of slightly edged towards Ronaldo, and when you kind of take into account this is a home fixture and the stats should probably be better for a home side than an away side, I think that's why Ronaldo also edges it on the stats point of view. Now finally, going over the projected points for game week 6, and if you guys don't know what this section's about, I went over to Fantasy Football Fix and I used their algorithm to create the 3 highest scorers in game week 6 alone. Now I want to give you guys a little bit of a disclaimer here. Bruno Fernandes is actually predicted to score the 2nd highest points, but I wanted to get a little bit of variance in here and not just focus on one team only, and that's why I did include a Jamie Vardy and also Antonio. So you guys can see in terms of expected points or projected points for game week 6, Ronaldo is yet again the leader with a massive 7.9, which is quite a lot higher than Jamie Vardy, who's the next in the line besides Bruno Fernandes on 5.7. So Jamie Vardy is another interesting option to go for if you guys want to be a little bit differential. I know not many managers actually do own Jamie Vardy, and he's actually come up in my YouTube comments and my Twitter DMs quite a lot. So if you guys do want to go for him, has a nice fixture against Burnley if I do recall, and I think that Leicester have shown that even if they're not on the best of form, Jamie Vardy can still get some FPL returns. Then third in line, I mentioned my differential, or maybe even best captaincy option to go for is going to be Antonio, coming in with a nice 5.6 projected points for game week 6. But in terms of the projected points, kind of a no-brainer decision. Yeah, 7.9 is a massive expected points for an FPL option. And that's why I think, considering my personal thoughts, the stats, and the projected points, Ronaldo does seem to have slightly edged it over Mo Salah and Antonio. Let me know in the comments down below who you guys are going for. I always love it. You guys make your own FPL decisions. Some of you are probably going to come in and captain Ismail Assar probably after his good return in game week 5. I've also seen a couple of trends on Arnold captains, but I always don't really like to go for a defender, so I would probably suggest to go for Mo Salah if you have been considering Trent. But this is basically up the video, guys. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. I'll hopefully be seeing you guys for a deadline stream on Saturday. I'll probably will be there, but I hope you guys are as well. And I'll be answering all your questions in that stream after we get all the press conference news. I'm going to be signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.